Hello and welcome to another edition of Mailbag. What is Mailbag? Well, Mailbag is a feature of the channel where you guys leave lots of comments on the channel and I attempt to answer those comments, or if I can't answer those comments, I throw it out to you guys who have more knowledge on some of this stuff than I do. So let's get into the first mailbag of this session. Remember, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Go over to Instagram and follow me there. Go over to Facebook, follow me there. That's where the normal notices are. And consider becoming a Patreon. I always used to say, this is the final one of this recording session, and when these used to go out in linear format, this would have been the last video segment you saw. But as they don't go out in linear format anymore, this could be anywhere in the release schedule. But this next one comes from Jack and Jill Marley, and it's in response to how to trigger multiple tone from library cards on the Roland U-220. Video I did in March 2016. And they write, I personally have a U-220, but unfortunately not only is the value down or decrement key not working, but with the U-220 it doesn't loop back to the first tone yet. The U-110 will loop. I don't know why Roland decided to make the navigation linear on the U-220. I don't know whether it's possible to use MIDI to edit the patches. First thing is, on some things this is a relatively easy fix, and on this it actually is. The buttons are actually a relatively easy fix. You can readily obtain the buttons from many parts suppliers around the world, but I recently bought the parts from Mouser, part number 688-SKHHAR, and then they can be desoldered. The new parts can then be dropped in their place and soldered in as a direct replacement. So you can actually fix the problem really easily. So I wouldn't go down the route of trying to do patch editing and all kinds of weird and wonderful things just for the fact that your buttons don't work. The next thing is what version of operating software or the firmware are you operating? I believe the last version one was 1.02, and I know that between versions they did subtly alter the navigation, although this was never documented. Okay, so if you've got the Roland user manual for the U-220, you'll find that it is the base level firmware, and any modifications they put into the later versions of the firmware never got documented in a supplementary user manual. I think there is a supplementary user manual floating around, but I'm not sure I've ever seen it. I've heard about it, but I've never seen it. But this is where these functions were documented, but that's long since been lost, I suspect. I'm sure, as I say, there are a number of people selling the ROM chip upgrades on eBay for about $20. In most cases, it should be just a lift and shift of the original and plug in the new chip without desoldering without soldering. However, you might find you've got an early version of the board where they did solder the chip in, and therefore you have to desolder the chip. If you're going to desolder the chip, I recommend you put an IC holder in there, so that if you have to change the chip again in the future for any reasons, it's just a case of lifting it out and putting a new one in. And finally, if you want to be able to edit patches on your computer, there are a number of people that have written librarians for this stuff. Most are free of charge, but they also carry the risks about downloading software from the internet. Freeware always carries an issue, and you just need to be careful you're not downloading and installing viruses that have been written into this stuff via the back door, because once you allow this stuff to run, it will run, and that's the end of it. Personally, I would probably look for a Mac or an Atari version because they're much harder to hack. Anyway, I hope this information helps you guys. Next comment or question comes from D2V Music about the anatomy of sampler, a mailbag I did in April 2022. D2V writes, very true regarding the imported speed from from modern storage devices. I've recently installed a USB floppy drive emulator onto my Yamaha SY85 synth, and so the saving inputs would be faster. Not so. Now, there is a reason. They take just as long with the early floppy drive. My emulator has a display so I can see which virtual floppy drive disk I'm loading from, and the SY85 display lets me know which file I'm importing from the virtual library. Now, it's great to get another person's view on this, but especially on the emulator process, because a number of these emulators are sold on the performance improvement. And to be honest, it's a load of baloney. And there is a reason why it works this way. So as I've said in the video, the keyboards can only buffer data at a certain rate. So it doesn't matter whether you've got the fastest machine in the world that can send data. If the machine you've got receiving it can't receive data at that speed, it's the reality is that the data transfer is going to fail. And the reason why it's going to fail is because your sending machine sends it so fast, the receiving machine can only receive at a certain speed, so it only receives a portion of the data, therefore the data will fail. And it's for that reason that a number of the cheaper emulators don't throttle the data transfer speeds of the keyboard or the equipment that you're installing it into. And it's probably why many people complain about the fact that the emulator tends to drop out or drop data. But it's purely because of this throttling mechanism. These things will only speak at a certain rate. It's like when you do sysx between sysx and your computer. You have to really throttle the baud rate right down. Your computer can operate at megahertz, but your synthesizer can only receive data at I don't know, bits per minute. Not megabits per minute, bits per minute.